listening to the Powell Movement.
Welcome to another episode of the Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and my guest this week is Bobby Brown. And for you older folks out there, I'm talking about the Bobby Brown that likes his powder on the mountains. This Bobby Brown had a late start in skiing, and every little step he takes has led to X Games and Dew Tour podiums. But it's my prerogative that that's not good enough. The only thing Bobby hasn't won is an Olympic medal, and his shot is coming up this February. But first, he needs to qualify. We're going to talk to Bobby about his whole career, but before we do that, I need to ask you to please follow me on Instagram at the Powell Movement and reach out to me with any questions or concerns that you have. My email is mike@thepowellmovement.com. I also want to ask you to support my sponsors. They are evo.com, diecutstickers.com, Sierra at Tahoe Resort, Rescue Water, and Unofficial Networks. They support me and in turn make this show happen, so please support them. And now, let's talk to Bobby Brown. So we are in a unique studio situation here. We are at a house at government camp, and Bobby and I are in a bedroom. I'm sure Bobby is going to love spending the next hour locked in a room with me.
Yeah, dude, I'm stoked. I'm glad to be here. Government camp, amazing place, Mount Hood, Oregon. I'm psyched.
Nice. So what has your summer been like?
Yeah, summer's been pretty good. Didn't finish up my season until June. Went to Mammoth, got some skiing in at the end of May, and then took mid-June off, and then got out here for a couple weeks. Been here for about 3 weeks, and yeah, just kind of getting back into the swing of things.
Nice. So the life of a pro skier, it ended in June this year for you. So really, I mean, we're only in mid-July, so you really haven't had too much time to do anything fun, I would think, have you?
Yeah, not really. It's kind of like, get 2 weeks at home, and that's kind of the fun thing. That's kind of the vacation, to be at home. And I mean, then, to come out to Oregon's not that bad either. So we were trying to fit in some fun trips in between all the skiing. But yeah, I go home for 2 weeks and then go to New Zealand for a month. So I'm just really trying to ski as much as possible. And that's kind of the main objective. And it's a vacation in itself.
And home for you is in Denver, right?
Yes, Denver, Colorado.
And are you a big Broncos fan?
Yes, Broncos, Avs, Nuggets, all of it. My brother and I are huge sports fans, so love when they're doing well.
Great. Well, I want to remind you of a time, it was about, 4 years ago. Everyone in Denver was riding a mile-high wave of adrenaline thinking you were going to spank the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. And how was that night for you?
That was crazy. I was actually in Sochi. I was there for the Olympics. And we were obviously like 9 hours ahead. And so I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, caught the first quarter, literally the worst first quarter of football I've ever seen, went back to bed, woke up and saw the score be some astronomical number where the Seahawks took down the Broncos. So at least that's something to distract me a little bit, the Olympics, from the defeat. But yeah, it was all right. We got it 2 years later down the road. So we're doing all right.
Yeah, you definitely got it back. And it was nice to see Peyton Manning win a Super Bowl. But in speaking of your personal Super Bowls, you've had a lot between the Olympics and the X Games, and we're going to talk about all those. But life for you starts in Denver, Colorado?
Yeah, Denver, Colorado. Born and raised right outside of Denver, and Breckenridge was my home resort growing up. Weekend warrior all through high school, and then graduated high school and moved to Breck for a few years, but now relocated back at home in Denver.
And when you say you're a weekend warrior and that's how skiing began for you, you have a different ski story than a lot of X Games gold medalists, I'll tell you that. In terms of how your skiing started, you didn't start skiing till what, 11 years old?
Yeah, I think I was 11 or 12, one of the two. So definitely a little later on.
And what were you doing before that? So you're growing up in Denver, and what are the sports that you're participating in?
I mean, anything that could get me in the air. I mean, it was skateboarding, biking. It really didn't matter. It was like X Games from when I was 6 years old on was like the dream. Like literally I looked through all these drawings that I had when I was in kindergarten, and it's X Games. I mean, I didn't even realize that until I went back and my mom was showing me some of these things, but that was literally all I cared about. X Games, and then the gravity games came along, and that was literally all I lived for. I mean, I definitely played normal sports growing up too, but during the week and when I was at school, all that was on my mind was the X Games and skiing and whatnot. And when I got those 2 days on the weekend, it was all out. And no matter what it was like, we were out there.
Well, you say those 2 days on the weekend, you say growing up, that was all that was on your mind. But if you didn't ski till you were 11 and you're drawing pictures in kindergarten, it had to be skateboarding, BMX, rollerblading. Were you into all those sports?
Yeah, that was it. Literally all of that. And then once the Olympics kind of rolled around, Jonny Moseley was kind of the hot thing, and he did the dinner roll. Then I was like, man, like the mountains are only like 2 hours away from my house. Like, hey mom, like, can we go skiing? Can we do this? And so that's when kind of the X Games ski dream kind of started to happen. And I'm figured like, man, that's a good route that I could take where maybe I could make the X Games. So I was no good at skateboarding or rollerblading or biking or any of that. So thought I might try it on some skis.
Well, before you got into skiing, what athletes were you looking up to in those other sports?
I mean, all the staples for sure. And in skateboarding, I mean, it was just crazy. It was like weird things that you wouldn't think, like Daewon Song. He was on a poster that I had back in the day, on an Element poster. We had Ryan Nyquist, Dave Mira, all those X Games staples, you know, all those legends that I'm like, man, like, because that's when X Games were crazy when I was younger. And it was like, those guys were more than human. Tony Hawk, all those guys. So it was definitely like the older generation guys. And then it became kind of Jonny Moseley. And then once skiing came into play, it was, you know, Tanner, Simon, TJ, those kind of guys.
When you say it's kind of the old school, it really was. When they started the X Games, it was the Olympics to those athletes. They had nothing else. I don't want to say you grew up lucky to have all these things, but that first generation of guys, they didn't have the contest that you have today to make an income. And being that you're a contest skier who's starting to get into the backcountry as well, but a lot of your income is coming from sponsors and contests. Back 20 years ago, they didn't really exist until those first X Games, and it really changed the face of what action sports are for everyone. Later, I want to talk about what the X Games has evolved into and your thoughts on that. But let's stick with you being a kid and what other sports you're playing. I mean, I look at you and you're like the All-American kid. You're tall, good-looking, in shape, and I'm sure you have every opportunity at your fingertips. And I'm wondering, are you one of those natural athletes at any sport you played? You're one of the better people on the team?
No, definitely not. I mean, my dad was he was a professional tennis player, played in Australia, New Zealand, didn't make it to like Wimbledon or anything like that, but was an insane tennis player growing up, through high school, everything. He got us into tennis. I played a little high school tennis, never made varsity, but it was on varsity too. We actually had 300 kids on our tennis team in my high school. Yeah, so we had 3 different varsities, 3 different JVs. I mean, my graduating class had 1,200 kids. So we had a big school. I played a little lacrosse for a year. And then honestly, it was literally, I played baseball and everything. But it's funny because those sports were there, but it was always skiing. And then when skiing kind of started to pick up a little bit, and then realized I couldn't really play in those spring sports because I'd rather be skiing, then it kind of became a one-track kind of mind. And I never was really into those kind of sports at all. And like, yeah, I like to play basketball, I like to play baseball and all those other sports or whatever, but it was literally never in the forefront of my mind. It was always this alternative action sports kind of deal. Like that's what I lived on. Like I would be in the backyard playing baseball or basketball or something with my friends and they'd all be wanting to keep playing. I'm like, no, dude, the gravity games are on. They're like, dude, what are the gravity games? Like that doesn't even exist. And I'll never forget like watching Dave Mira at a gravity games, but he did double backflip on a bike and I was tripping out. And like, I just remember seeing my friends, like I must have been like 10 years old, looking at me like I was crazy. Like I have no idea what you're talking about. But to me, straight up, the X Games, all that kind of stuff was like the Super Bowl, like the World Series. Like those were nothing to me growing up.
What I took away from that whole thing was you had 300 people on your tennis team. What kind of high school did you go to?
Yeah, I went to a big high school down in Denver, Cherry Creek High School.
Was it really rich?
It was a really diverse school, actually. It was crazy. We had people coming from all different kinds of incomes, different family situations. We definitely had a higher end. We definitely had kids that were struggling a lot. It was like a college, honestly. It was like a big mix of kids. And like I said, I had 1,200 kids in my graduating class. Like I'd walk down the hallway and literally see a new person every single day I was there. I literally had 3 friends there and we were all skiers. And that's all we talked about, all we thought about. And that was it. Now I'm stoked that I got to go to that school because it was just like, you could kind of just do whatever you wanted to do and find your own crew and roll with it. You know, you didn't know everyone at the school.
One other question in that. Your dad was a professional tennis player. Even the worst pro tennis players make bank, it seems like. So did your dad do well in tennis? Because that's a pretty cool thing to say, hey, my dad's a pro athlete.
It wasn't like a monetary thing at all. Like he was literally playing tennis just to be able to travel and check everything out. And he played in college at CU and was the #1 tennis player there. It's never about the money or anything like that. And so now he's a successful home builder, which I think is even cooler than being a pro tennis player.
I don't know if your dad was in Wimbledon. I think that would be cooler, but a home builder's cool as well.
He's the man. But I mean, just to that point, he loves what I do and what I've done because he knows just the mental aspect of it. Maybe not to the same level, but he definitely has been there, kind of known the feelings that I've gone through and things like that on pretty much the same level. So it's been cool.
Yeah, it sounds like he would fit more in with the dirtbag skier living on couches to get place to place. You've lived a different professional skier lifestyle because you got so good so quick. At 11 years old, you see Jonny Moseley do the dinner roll. Most people were inspired by Jonny Moseley for doing the 360 mute, but you, being young, 4 years later, you get inspired by the dinner roll, and that's when you start badgering your parents, hey, we need to go skiing?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we've gone skiing like a couple times, here and there, but I'd never forget getting back on the bus, and like it was the big lead up in the Olympics, like Jonny Moseley's going to do the dinner roll, and I got on the school bus to go back home, and everyone's looking at me like, dude, what are you talking about? But I'm like, dude, I'm ready to see it. And then that night when I saw it, the D-spin cork 7 dinner roll thing, I was like, boom, this is it. Like, this is what I want to do. So, my parents are epic, and they figured out a way that I could get up there on the weekends and learn how to do that. And that's kind of where it all started.
You're the weekend warrior. You're spinning as many laps as you possibly can, bummed to go back to school on Monday. Does it ever change for you where you're able to go ski every day?
Oh, when you ski every day, you get a little jaded for sure, and you don't take advantage of it every single day. But it's been like ebbs and flows with my career of being like really fired up and then trying to find the fire and then trying to ward off like a little bit of energy because you get a little too much. So out here, I feel invigorated. I feel stoked just to be on my skis and trying to recapture that feeling that I had when you're young. Because when you're doing that, you're literally just flowing. You're not thinking about all the other BS. You're cruising. And when you're not thinking about that stuff, you ski at this another level that you can't really manufacture.
I get that, but I'm thinking more at the age of 11 to 14. Do you enter any academies where they're putting you on the hill every day? Because a lot of kids where you are today.
Did I?
Yeah.
No. I was a weekend warrior until I was 18 years old, until I graduated high school. Right when I graduated high school, when I was 17 years old, I actually graduated early, took a few extra classes. My mom's like, hey, yeah, do whatever you want. I would go up, stay on my friend's floor, and then I ended up winning the Dew Tour. And then that's when things took off. So it was kind of this crazy transition. Like I literally lived this normal life, like just down in Denver, skiing 2 days a week, my whole entire life. And then all of a sudden win the Dew Tour, go to the X Games and stuff like that. So yeah, it was no academies, nothing like that. Literally just my brother and I jumping on the trampoline when I got home from school, going up skiing, and that's it.
There's like a 7-year window from the time that you start skiing till you win X Games gold. That is stupid. Nobody does that. And I don't know if you've ever heard of anybody that had that quick a turnaround.
I don't know. I'm sure there's examples out there. But yeah, like when you say like that, it was definitely a pretty quick transition.
First, you have to learn how to turn. It's not like, oh, I'm going to go ski when I'm 11 years old and I'm going to hit the park and hit the huge gaps. No, you have to learn how to ski first before you can figure out the jump. So it's probably 12, 13 where you're really getting some solid tricks under your belt. And when you started skiing, I was a team manager. I remember at the U.S. Open, it was a diarrhea of the switch 1080.
Yeah.
That's what everyone did. And tricks were so much different back then. And when you got into the game, I mean, the double game kind of came around right away. And you had to learn some stuff that the old school guys didn't have to learn. And without an academy background, you had a trampoline at home. But tell us what goes into learning these tricks, the bumps and bruises that go along with it, because it's not like you're sticking everything first try.
No, I mean, yeah, it was back in the day. It was like, I literally remember the whole chronological order of the whole progression. Like I was 12 years old, I learned a backflip at the beginning of the year. At the end of the year, I did a 720 and I was just like losing it at that point. And then I went to A Basin that spring, did a cork 7. I'm talking about like little rollers, like nothing. And then 13 and moving up there, I'm like, man, I'm going to get in the park and start doing tricks. And literally stuff started just happening. I was skiing by myself. Whoever was there, it didn't matter. Like I literally didn't have a crew at all. I was just like, my friend wanted to come, he'd come. My brother was coming, it'd be the crew. So it was just like a really small group of people. But to me, in my mind, it was like, I don't even care. I'm just going to go out and learn as many tricks as possible. And like you said, when the doubles were kind of coming in, I'll never forget when I was 16 years old and the year before I'd done a double backflip, and that at the time was a double backflip, but definitely a little crazy. And then when I was 16 years old, I was at Breckenridge and I was skiing by myself. It was the end of the day, and Yoon Olsen had just done a switch double 10. He'd kangaroo flip, the dub 10, all that stuff. And I'll never forget, I'm like, man, I really think I got a switch dub 10. And at the time, probably 3 people had done a switch dub 10 at that time. I think it was Yoon, Jakob.
Gagne too, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it was a really select thing. And it was so different nowadays. Like, you didn't know who had done stuff too, because stuff would come out way later. There was never like an Instagram or anything like that. And so literally skiing by myself, it might have been like 3 o'clock in the afternoon at Breckenridge. The jumps are in straight shadows. And I'm like, man, I think I got a switch dub 10. And so I rolled into the jump switch. I dropped my edge, grabbed safety. And I literally did this thing in the air. I'm like, I landed switch, and I'm like, what did I just do? And then I thought about it, and I'm like, I just landed a switch dub 10. And I was freaking out so hard that the only person I could think to call was my mom. And I call her up. I'm like, Mom, you don't even know I just landed switched up 10. And like, she's trying to be excited, but she has no idea what I'm talking about. But at that moment, I was like, oh my God, dude, like, I can do this. I can compete with these guys. And then I went to North American Open that same year and ended up getting fourth behind Yoon, Jakob, and Tanner Rainville. And that was just this huge momentum into the next following years. So each year kind of had its big moment that I just kept riding the momentum.
And I'm going to get into sponsors because I'm sure that's what's going to happen next. And before I talk about my sponsors, I want you to tell me who yours are.
I'm sponsored by Red Bull, GoPro, Smith, Salomon, and Life Proof.
Huh, you got to be starving, man. Those are some tough sponsors to work with, I would think.
Yeah, they're pretty epic. I've been with Smith for almost 10 years, Red Bull almost 8 years, Salomon 10 years. It's been pretty awesome having those guys behind me.
You know, it's funny when I do interviews with people and we talk about sponsors, a lot of the people that have had the 25-year careers or the 20-year careers have done exactly what you just said and kept with the same sponsors. And maybe one year there's not as much budget and they had to take a pay cut, but then it was made up a couple years later. But something is to be said for loyalty with sponsors and just sticking with the people that believed in you from the beginning. And that's a winning combination from what I've seen in athletes. And I'm going to jump into my sponsors right now. The first is evo.com. And if you haven't visited evo.com or one of their stores in Seattle, Denver, or Portland, then you are completely missing out. Evo is your one-stop shop for ski, snowboard, wake, bike, skate, surf, accessories, shoes. They have it all, and they have knowledgeable employees that can tell you all about the products. Evo offers a no-hassle return policy, free shipping on orders of $50 or more, and for listening to the Powell Movement, they're going to give you 10% off your entire order. When you check out, enter the code TPM10, and that will give you that 10% off. My next sponsor is diecutstickers.com. And when you're making stickers, you want to have the best adhesive, the best print, and the best service with the vendor that you're working with. Die Cut Stickers is that vendor. The people there understand all your branding needs. They've been in this for 15 years. They have a brand new state-of-the-art 12,000 square foot facility where they produce nothing but the best for their customers. I highly recommend that if you're working with another sticker manufacturer at the moment, give Die Cut a call. You're going to find out what I'm talking about when I say service and quality. You're never going to want to work with another manufacturer again because Die Cut is the best out there. And just for listening to the Powell Movement, Die Cut is going to give you 10% off your first order. When you request a quote on the phone or online, enter or say the code DCS15. They will give you that 10% off your first order, and you will be a diecutstickers.com customer for life. But that's enough about my sponsors. Now let's get back to your life. And we're talking about you learning dubs. Yep. And from there, I think it was a dew tour that you won at first at home. It was a big contest. You're at home in Breck at the dew tour.
Yeah, it was a Breckenridge. First dew tour ever, yeah.
And you win that. And that's something that puts you on the map. People know who you are already. You've definitely turned some heads and people are talking about you. But when you show up at a contest, show that you have no nerves, you're able to go out there and win it. And you probably had a ton of nerves. But when you can win a contest, it seems like you don't have nerves. How does that open up sponsor doors for you? Is that when the sponsorships happen or did it happen before that?
That was a little later on for sure. I mean, my first sponsor was Saga Outerwear, which was so sick. Austin Stevens. I was skiing out at Hood one summer and I was 15 and he came up and he's like, hey, I'll give you a free suit or whatever. And that was my first like quote unquote sponsor. And then that kind of faded off. And then going into the US Open when I was 15 years old, like you said, switch 10s were going down. I somehow made it into the big air contest. I did a kangaroo flip or a double flat 9 to switch. And I'll never forget Gabe Schroeder, legendary Gabe Schroeder, came up to me. He's like, man, I've been watching you all season. I want to get you on the program. And he's the Smith team manager at the time. And Smith was like my thing. Fuse regulators were my goggle. I loved it. It was everything I wanted to wear. And so I was just like, oh my God, yeah. So we kept in touch after that. And then another thing, that same US Open, Mike Clark, who was a pro skier and now killing it in the video world, was on Salomon at the time. And he went up to Jenny Naflin, who was working at Salomon, and was like, hey, you got to pick up Bobby. Like, you got to check him out or whatever. And so then it's funny because the year before, my mom had helped me with these resumes and putting things on DVD players and sending all my footage out. Like back in the day, that's what you would do. You'd make this like hilarious little resume. And my mom got these like plastic covers for me and like all this stuff that's just like so legendary of my mom. And I'd send one to Jenny Naflin. I'll never forget like sending it because I'm like, I finally got her contact somehow. But then the next year is kind of when things started falling through. And she's like, yeah, I actually remember seeing your little pamphlet and whatnot. So that's when stuff started taking off. I was on the Smith program when I was 16, and Salomon is when I signed with them when I was 16. So those were the first two sponsors. And then same year, I started writing for Under Armour as well, which was amazing. Then the next year was the Dew Tour. It was definitely pretty fast transition.
When you get on Salomon, they had a stacked team. I mean, Jenny, she's also known as the Salomon.
Yeah.
And she was amazing at finding really young talent. It was all organic, and they found kids. I can't even start naming the names of people because it seemed like, especially in the contest world, every good skier was on Salomon at that time. Did you ever see that start paring back when they realized that they had, because at the time when they got you, you kind of went on a tear, right?
That was crazy because like their brand, Salomon Freeski, was like the biggest thing ever. They had Salomon Jib Academy. They were doing all these different videos. They had Sammy Carlson, Simon Dumont, Peter Olenek. I mean, the list literally goes on. John Sims, Tommy Ellingson. They had Candide at one time. They had CR, like literally almost every single legendary guy has come through the doors of Salomon and been a part of it. And I remember being a part of it and getting on the pro team or whatever with Sammy and Simon. And I was just like, holy, like these dudes, I've been watching these guys forever. These guys are straight legends and I'm on the team with them. And, then when you guys got like Charles Gagne, I mean, literally every single guy was on that program and Salomon was the team. That was literally like the dream team. I mean, I can't even state it enough. Like every sponsor that I've had, honestly, I wanted to rep them before I even rode for them, which was like the coolest feeling ever. And same with the Smith team. But yeah, Salomon for sure was the super team back then. It was crazy.
And how involved are you with your sponsors? I know you've done projects with Red Bull. I think there was Bobby's Life. I know there was Bobby's Life because I've watched a lot of it. But how often are you in touch with the sponsors and how much of your time does that take? Because what some people don't realize is that these sponsors get 10 days or so of your life every year. Just part of the deal. You sign a contract, they pay you money, you give them time. And how much does that take of your time?
Nowadays, it's kind of like, yeah, here you go. Like, let's see what you can do because everyone's a content creator. Everyone's kind of doing their own thing. But sponsorship in general has just changed than what it used to be because it used to be like, hey, let's go on this team trip. Let's do this team shoot. Let's do this team thing. And to me, like it feels a little less team oriented, but at the same time, everyone's just trying to adapt to like the new world that we kind of live in where it's all digitalized. But that's the name of the game. Like I want to be a part of each sponsor as much as I can. And for example, like Smith, like I love working with those guys. Like I'm always talking to those guys, working on the goggle, working on ideas, going on team shoots and stuff like that. And like the camaraderie of having like one of those teams is like the things you look to. Like when you see a team video, you're like, oh my God, that's all time, like you used to go see team trips and you're like, I want to be a part of that. And Red Bull for sure, they're all about creating content. They're all about doing crazy things out of the box. And that's something I'm trying to transition to and working with those guys super closely on everything. And they just have such a good thought of where the space is right now. So, I mean, yeah, I love every single one of them. Like not just saying that straight up. There's amazing people at each company that I have a really good relationship with.
And I will say that you have to take all your sponsors and Red Bull comes out of that box as someone that's totally different than anybody else you're working with.
Yeah.
You can come with an idea, and as long as it's well thought out, they're going to take it and run with it. Is that how your reality show came together?
Yeah, that was kind of crazy. That was at like kind of the forefront of YouTube, honestly, and like kind of the changing of putting a series together. So that was back in 2011 maybe. And honestly, I didn't take advantage of it, to tell you the truth. I didn't know what it was about. I kind of wanted to focus on my skiing, and then having this guy end up filming 25 episodes was like, whoa, what am I doing? But it was such a good opportunity that I could have really worked a lot more for, and just like, hey, let's do a little extra here and let's do something creative here instead of going through the motions. But Red Bull, we did Mega Slope together at Kirkwood, which was like this insane project where we built a huge park on the backside of Kirkwood. And that was something that I've never seen so many resources go into a project. That just was like, oh my God, like these guys are doing this for me and as a brand and together, like that was pretty special. So it's just crazy. That company has done so many things for action sports and has stayed in the game and stayed true to it. So I definitely respect them so much.
It's crazy. They're still privately owned. And
yeah,
they put up a lot of resources into owning athletes' heads. And I think it's a really good trade.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. The thing is that also with them too is like they have this performance side, and it's like a lot of people don't like to focus on performance and like actually taking care of yourself. But it's like, dude, if you're going to keep me in the game longer, then it's kind of an investment into the athlete, into the asset that they have, that like, hey, like we have all these resources for you to take advantage of. If you want to, we'll help you do that and have this huge team around you to do it. And I'm like, dude, that's all time that they're so invested in you that they want to help you as an athlete. in your own personal zone so that you can keep doing things that you want to do. So I literally could talk about them forever, you know?
Yeah, and I think through all the athletes I've talked to, everybody has a great Red Bull story. The best one that came up recently, JT Holmes, he was buried in an avalanche. He took his last conscious breath. He thought he was done with, but he said at one point he remembered he wasn't able to go to this Red Bull workshop, but some of the other Red Bull athletes were talking to him about how to control his breathing. And he said he remembered some of the Red Bull information while he was thinking he was taking his last breath. He was able to be dug out and saved. But the fact that in his last moments of what he thought his life was going to be, he's thinking to a Red Bull training session is a pretty amazing thing for that brand.
Was that recently?
That happened in, I want to say, May 2016.
Yeah, that's crazy because I think I was on that camp that he must have heard about with Michelle Parker, which I'm sure they talked about. And then he was actually involved in one of these newer camps. It's powerful, the things they do with their people. So that's a crazy story, though.
Obviously, they're going to help their own brand as well.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they're going to sell a ton of energy drinks regardless.
Yeah.
And they are definitely supporting their athletes in a way that no other sponsor does. If you look at other energy drink brands, I don't want to say hoard their logo out, but they sell it to a lot of people. And Red Bull doesn't do that. They keep true to what they've been doing since 1996 or whenever they were founded. Moving on into your life, the X Games are your dream from when you were 8 years old or whenever you're in kindergarten, you mentioned earlier. So the X Games are your dream. You finally get in skiing and you realize that you're good. You win contests and you're invited to the X Games. And that X Games is in Colorado. And walk me through the whole X Games experience.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. Like the first X Games I was in, I was 17 years old and I was an alternate. And I was skiing the course first time, feeling it out. And remember, it was kind of at the end of when Tanner was starting to stop skiing slope. And he had a spot in slope style. And I'll never forget, like Mike Douglas came up to me and he's like, yo, like I think Tanner's going to drop out. I don't know if he's feeling slope. Like just keep skiing. Like you're in the contest. And so I'm like, oh my God, like holy shit. Like Tanner's going to give me a spot or whatever. And then last day right before training, Tanner's like, dude, I'm out. The spot's yours or whatever. And so I was like, wow, dude, that was pretty insane. Tanner Hall giving up the spot for me to get down on this. And so that was my first experience there. I think I got like 6 or something like that. But yeah, that kind of was a good intro to X Games. I didn't know if I was in or not. I was just going to go ski. And that's kind of the mentality that I took into it. And so then the next year was 2010 when I won big air and slopestyle. And I had no nerves. I was literally just skiing. And I was skiing so much that I was in this mode where I'm like, hey, I'm just going to go do what I know how to do. It's not like I had any more pressure on myself. It's not like I was super competitive. I was like, no, I'm just skiing and I'm loving it so much. And now, you know, as the years kind of go on, it's kind of gets a little more nerve wracking. You know, I'm just like, man, I really got to do good at this contest this year. But trying to get back into that mind space, it's just fun. And that's just new and it's fresh. Because when it's like that, then it's so much more fun. And you can honestly just loosen up and do what you know how to do.
Your second X Games is the one that really established you as the top of the industry. That's the one where you win big air, you win slopestyle, and you're the first person, I can't even say this trick. I mean, I can say it. You landed the triple cork 1440, but Jesus Christ. It's amazing to see how the progression has come from 2008 to now. And this isn't even now. This is 2010. But you land a triple cork 1440 and...
That one I did the switch double misty 1440. That was that year.
I mean, either way.
Yeah.
The tricks that you're doing are so mind-blowing to me. And in a perfect world for me, if I'm to create a contest, I am a big fan of saying you create a 3-5-9 contest.
Yeah.
Let style rule it. Everybody can do all those tricks. But I mean, I get when you do something like the X Games or you do something like the Olympics, it's all about the degree of difficulty and the hardest tricks. But how do you even wrap your head around the rotations that you're doing?
I mean, that was kind of a crazy scenario. Like that was back 2010, like I said. So in 2009, it was the end of the year at Keystone. There was a perfect jump. And that's when I was just like kind of feeling it. And I was like, man, I talked to my buddies at Keystone. I'm like, man, I think like if I took off switch, I could just like drop into this new rotation. And I'll never forget. And they're like, dude, just go for it. And it was kind of a big jump. And I ended up going for it. I take off and I literally land perfect. And I'm like, oh my God, dude, are you kidding me? And it was filmed on like a horrible little camera. So I couldn't even look at it or whatever. And then I go to X Games and off the last jump, I didn't do it until I got to X Games, until my contest run, and ended up being able to do it. But it was just this crazy time in skiing when there was still all these variations that were possible, you know, where it's like you could lean your shoulder one way and it would turn into something else. And every day there was something new happening. That was the most exciting time ever because it's like you'd get to the hill and you have the possibility of landing something no one has ever landed before. And now it's obviously, as time has gone on and things have gotten crazier and gnarlier, it's definitely a little more challenging. But that was just insane 4 years, I think it was, where it was just like nonstop progression.
And you landed that trick first try 2 different times?
Yeah, it was crazy. And I'll never forget, like, Andreas Hotvite was up at the top, and he's like, because it's like a switch Misty 9, and then I drop into like another 5, and he's like, oh my God, I thought you were literally over rotating on a switch Misty 9. Like, he was so confused on the rotation and everything. and I landed it, and he ended up getting second that year too, and he was skiing so well. And so that's what I'm saying, though. It's just like you just ride the momentum so hard at certain times.
And at that point, that's when all the old guys get scared. They realize that their shelf life is a little bit short because in the Switch 1080 days, those guys could do that in their sleep and was boring for skiing, in my opinion. It was great when you saw the first one, but when I saw the 30th one in one contest, it wasn't that cool. Then we went through the truck driver days, and then we moved on to where you're throwing doubles, you're throwing triples, and the guys that are getting a little bit older, there's a fear that comes with age that when you're 17, your bones are rubber. You don't care at all. And the guys that are 27, Andreas is probably, 26 at that point?
Yeah, exactly.
He's got to know at that point he can't hang anymore. Yeah. He's like, I can get second, but there's going to be a couple more Bobby Browns coming out, and then I'm not going to be able to compete anymore. And I look at that time, and you are a different one than a lot of them, because a lot of academy kids came in with a robotic style, and anybody that sent in a resume to K2 that had an academy background, I kind of looked away from that. And you were the one guy who didn't have that was on top of the game. But who were the people that you were tight with?
My brother, Peter Brown, number one. He was always like my guy there in the ski world. But then Russ Henshaw from Australia, Elias Ombel from Switzerland, and Gus Kenworthy, he's from Colorado. It was crazy with Gus because we accelerated our careers at different times. So he was definitely like 3 years later than myself, because he was invited to X Games 2 years after myself. But we grew up being the two guys in Colorado that were getting invited to these big contests and whatnot. We're the same age. And so I'll never forget it when I landed my run in slopestyle. My buddy Colby and Gus both like tore me down, ripped my bib off, and we're just like so hyped on the contest and the result and everything. And then to see Gus, obviously do what he's doing nowadays and killing it in the contest and whatnot. So those were like my 3 really good friends. Jossie Wells is a really good friend too. It's just kind of funny, just the older guys just trying to still hold it down for us. I mean, everyone was cool. I mean, I just have to say those 4 were definitely like my really good friends.
Contest worlds now, you have to be a full-on athlete.
Yeah.
It's not like it was before. You can't be Roy Silva smoking a joint on the sidelines before entering a contest with a real shot to win. You have to be a total athlete and totally focused. And in terms of your preparation for a season, you're going to prepare for the biggest year in your entire life this year, except for the last Olympic year. And what goes into your training now? Do you actually work out? I heard you started going to the gym, which is weird.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of started this whole process like a month ago when I decided I really want to try this. I've been in the game for so long. It's like, man, I'm not going to let this opportunity whittle away. It's like, even if I don't make the team, I don't do well at the Olympics, like whatever, at least I put my full foot forward and tried to make it and do what I know I can do. And yeah, so like I said, I went out to Red Bull in California, worked with this trainer guy. And I mean, we're just doing like not really weightlifting, just kind of moving, trying to get like everything firing so that when you're on skis, you can just ski longer. That's the point. It's not that I can like jump higher or lift more weights. It's like, no, I just want to be able to ski as long as I can during the day and get as good as I can skiing. So yeah, I mean, I'm going full in on this now, and that's why we're out here. My brother is going to be working with me, just helping me, filming me, and kind of helping me just get over the psychological things, and going to New Zealand for 2 months. And we're just literally going to be on skis for the next 5 months, just trying to get ready for this thing.
And now it's time for me to jump into my final set of sponsors, and the first is Rescue Water, and they are all about proactive recovery. What does that mean to you? Well, think of it like this. If you're really tired, you skip the coffee and you grab an energy drink. And when you really need to hydrate, like when you're working out, going out, or getting out there, skip the sports drink and drink a cold Rescue Water. It replaces electrolytes much better than your traditional sports drink, and I drink it before bed to stay hangover free, and it really works. Head on over to Rescue Water, that's resqwater.com, and you can save 20% on a 12-pack case when you enter the code RESQWaterTPM with no spaces, capital or lowercase when you check out, and you'll save 20% on that 12-pack case. And for my final sponsor, if you are planning a trip to the Tahoe area, look no further than Sierra at Tahoe. They are the only Tahoe resort that's certified on Sirius and delivers an amazing value. And they operate a little bit differently than most. One thing you're going to find at Sierra at Tahoe is a better view of the Sierra at Tahoe Lodge than anywhere else in the Tahoe area. And if you're from the Sacramento area, Sierra at Tahoe is only a stone's throw away, if you can throw a stone 91 miles. Sierra at Tahoe really has it all, unless you're looking for a Starbucks or a long lift line. So if you live in the area or you're planning a trip to Tahoe, head on over to sierraattahoe.com for more information. Now, let's head back to Bobby Brown.
Well, we'll talk about the last Olympics. So leading up to that, if you would have asked me who I'd put my money on, and I bet you 90% of the world would say Bobby Brown. You just had so much exposure. You had so many wins. And you come into Sochi, and that whole experience has to be interesting because here in the U.S., we looked at it as a total junk show. It looked like a shit show, although I did read there was a lot of powder there. But what was the experience for you in Sochi?
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I was coming off an ankle injury. Before that, I'm not even lying. Like, to make the team was like I won the Olympics. I had so much pressure just to straight up make the team that I was so relieved when I made it. And I guess that wasn't really the best mindset going into it because then I'm like, get there and I'm like, just feel this sense of like relief. Anyway, when I first showed up, we actually skied some of the best powder I've ever skied in my life. And so it was like Gus, Joss, and I, and we were just launching all these cat tracks. They took us up on a lift, ended up closing that lift down and just letting us lap it.
Wow.
And it was straight up like waist deep pow for 5 hours right when we get to Sochi. Like every cat track was groomed too. So you'd ski this insane like patch of snow, all of a sudden come onto the cat track and be able to boost like 50 feet down into just blower snow. And then we skied some of the craziest chutes ever actually at the resort. So it was actually pretty all time when we got there. And then our contest was 12 days from when we got there to the contest. So it was like a long time to be there. And we trained on the course and it was icy every single day. And the day of the contest, it was literally perfect. And we had qualifiers in the morning, finals in the afternoon. And yeah, my experience there was not great. You know, I qualified last into finals. So I got the 12th spot going into finals and then ended up, I think, getting 9th place. I messed up in both runs. And then I saw Joss, Gus, and Nick all sweep the podium, which I was just over the moon about. I mean, those guys were absolutely on one. So yeah, it was just kind of crazy. I'll never forget coming down off the last jump and they're doing like the medal ceremony. And I'm literally just by myself, just had to go grab my backpack after I cooked it and didn't land my run and come down. And I see like all three of them standing on the box, just so elated and so stoked. And I'm like, I'm so stoked for them, but I just can't even like picture it. Like those three guys with the whole crowd there. And then there's just like random dude, the fourth American, just like standing to the other side, just like, oh man, that could have been me. But yeah, I mean, it was an interesting experience to say the least.
One thing is you go in there with an injured ankle, so there can't be super high expectations. You're going in there with a sense of relief that you made it. Would you have been embarrassed if you didn't make the team?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because like you said, there was a lot of hype around kind of what I was up to at that point in time. And not embarrassed, just more just like disappointed with like myself. And so I just like mentally just didn't give myself a good chance to do well. And that's one thing that I'm still trying to figure out, you know, but I was definitely pretty bummed. Just like, man, like, you just got to give yourself the best opportunity to do something crazy, you know? So yeah, it was definitely kind of a bummer, but you live and you learn and you figure out how to move on and do other things.
And so you leave the Olympics. I'm sure there's the Olympic hangover after that. You're probably a little bit bummed. I mean, you're psyched for your friends, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't not be. But at the same time, the dream is to stand on top of that podium. And what that means to an athlete when you get that gold, silver, or bronze, I mean, mainly gold, it's your baseball card. It's Bobby Brown, gold medalist. If you want me to speak anywhere for the rest of my life, it costs like $4,000. And that's just how it is. And you'll have another opportunity for that. Before we talk about the next Olympics, it seems like you're kind of making the move that a lot of pro skiers do. They start in contests and they kill it. And then they realize that the stress, frustration, and everything that goes around contests can get annoying compared to skiing powder. You put out an edit this year or a movie this year, Be Water. It's kind of a play on a Bruce Lee quote. And it's you having a lot of fun. And you need that after the Olympics. Was that something that you just needed to do to clear your head?
Yeah, I don't think it had anything to do with the Olympics, honestly. It was just more just me just being like, dude, like, this is so fun. This is so sick to go and challenge yourself in different kind of terrain and still use, like, what I love is, like, jumping and doing tricks and crazy tricks and get to go do it in these insane places and, like, really challenging conditions. Be Water and that whole year that I got to ski and do that project was the best year of my life. That just reinvigorated me to just, that I can do anything, that I can get back in the contest, that I can go film POW, that I can go ride lines. Like, I just, like, I want to keep challenging myself and doing different things in skiing. And yeah, I can't even start to tell you how awesome that year was. And it just got me excited because like nowadays in the whole world, it's like so much, like I said, was digitalized and so much is content and so much is crazy things like that. So if I get an opportunity to be able to do those kind of things and make a movie, make a edit, whatever it may be, like I'm so down.
As you should be. Your shelf life as a pro skier, it's limited. You have 20, 25 years to get it done, and that's on the long end. Unless you're Glenn Plake, and I guess you have long hair, you could make it into a mohawk. But that doesn't seem like your style, and you should take advantage of every opportunity you have. Sounds like you've been doing that. And the next big opportunity that's going to come up is going to be the Olympics in South Korea. And before I even talk about South Korea, Magazine put out an article yesterday that said that South Korea is talking to North Korea about moving the Olympics or moving the ski and snowboard or snow events up to North Korea. And what do you think when you read that?
I did not hear that, but that is just insane. We had a test event down there in South Korea and people were freaking out on how sick it was. Like just the people were epic. The venue was awesome. The course was awesome. So to hear that is definitely kind of a little red flag. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure it'll all get worked out for the best.
Yeah, I mean, it worked out in Sochi and there was about 6 million red flags there. So
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. And, the only thing I was thinking when I read that, and I don't, I only skimmed the article, but I was kind of just blown away. Like, how could that be in the conversation? But if they did move something to North Korea because of snow, which would be ridiculous, would the U.S. even be a part of it? And if something like that happened, it would be like stealing your wallet for the next 40 years, if you were to podium there. And I don't know, as an athlete, I mean, you can't worry about the variables like that. You can just worry about your skiing. But I'm sure after this, you're probably going to look into it a little bit and wonder what the F is going on here.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a kind of a bummer. Like the 2 Olympics I have a chance to go to are in Russia and South Korea now. Sounds like could be skiing in North Korea. But I mean, yeah, they're crazy places for sure. But I mean, I would have loved to go to Vancouver. That would have been insane. But I don't think it deters anyone. Like everyone always was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to go if this happens. Like, dude, it's the freaking Olympics, dude. Like you're not going to pass that up if other people are going and it's going to be all right, So the Olympics are just another beast, dude. Like it's just a whole production, this crazy show. There's so much that goes into it that's not the actual sport that it'll happen and people will go and do their thing.
What's funny is the Olympics, it's surprising to me that people even care anymore. I get that people care about skiing and snowboarding because that's the new addition. Skateboarding and BMX are in there as well. But I'd say 90% of the sports, when I was a kid and there was 4 channels, and you probably don't remember that, but when that happened and they showed them live, it was pretty cool. But, once I got to be about 14, the Olympics lost its luster. And then years later, the X Games came around and that became the exciting thing. And now that I look at it, the Olympics are now up on a bigger pedestal, I think, because of the global exposure you get. But right now, the X Games are going on in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I just found that out yesterday, where the X Games used to be my Olympics.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like there's just so much input. There's so much stuff happening like now, and you see so much of it. There's not like that's what I miss. It's like these pinnacle moments where it's like you have one shot to do this when X Games is going to be on TV, not on streaming live or whatever. It's like you only had, and I grew up even on like a more digitally advanced age, rather than it was like you said 4 TV channels. But it was like that was so cool to me. That was like, okay, I have to wait this whole year to watch this one event, and I'm going to put all my energy and all my mental capacity into this event. And so that's how I see it now. Like nowadays, it's like, man, everyone's, even from like just the skiing you see so much of it all day, every day, sitting on your phone, that you just like, you become desensitized to everything. You become desensitized to like action sports and the Olympics and whatever. And to me, like the X Games will always be my number one. Like the Olympics are awesome and I want to do them obviously and do well, but another X Games gold medal would be just, like that's what I got into with it. And that's the number one for sure. But yeah, I just think that it's just been so desensitized, like I said, that things aren't as special anymore, which I want to have that feeling come back.
There is something exciting in skiing going on right now. I guess I should have researched a little more to see if you've been a part of it yet, but I don't think you have. But have you followed slush at all?
Yeah, I did an Insta banger with Walker and those guys. And I mean, like you said, like just the exciting factor of that is hilarious. Like I'm going up to Windell's and like kids are like, I'm going to play slush. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And yeah, I haven't played a game yet, but I mean, I'm a huge fan of what those guys are doing and it's awesome. It's just another way and another cool, crazy outlet that gets you excited about what you love to do.
Yeah, and I think in the digital age, we're going to see all kinds of new contests because I think contest formats work for 5 to 10 years until, if the courses don't change or the format doesn't change, things get stale. I mean, it happened with the X Games. They had to bring in real street, real snow.
Yeah, true.
And they wanted to spice it up, and they're going to have to spice it up again to keep people, or at least make people aware that the X Games are even going on. In the winter, I think they do a better job of that because anybody who's skiing or snowboarding is in tune with that. And I'm going to end this with a question about money.
Yeah.
Normally, I ask people if they're able to pay their bills, and I'm sure you are because you have some amazing sponsors. And if you can't, I would want to vomit. But the question about money I have is, what is the dumbest thing someone has asked you to do for money?
That's the dumbest thing someone's asked me to do for money. There hasn't been that many dumb things to do for money. I mean, it's just more just like kooky promotional things that, at this point in my career that I'm just not willing to do. Literally, there hasn't been that many. And I honestly don't really have an answer for that.
You went on a date with someone once, I feel like. I saw something maybe 5 years ago in prom or something.
Oh, I never went on a prom date. I definitely made a few appearances at like some girls' birthdays and stuff like that.
Okay.
But that's no money involved with that. That's just to do for a nice thing.
Nice. Well, that's really, really nice of you. And girlfriend, single?
I'm engaged.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So,
congratulations, I mean.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to get married next June, so got a little bit of time, but she's pretty epic.
Nice. Well, congratulations on that. Congrats to an amazing career. People don't do it in 7 years to go from the bottom of the sport. I'll say from the bottom because you're a nobody at 11, and you ended up owning the whole ski world at 18. And given you're still in the top tier of everybody out there, but at 18 years old, when you take the 2 gold medals at X Games, it scares the older people and it lets people know that there's a new wave of skiing here. And you set the tone for that, and it's been cool to see. And I look forward to seeing it as we move towards South Korea.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate you talking about it. Feels good to bring back some old memories and get excited for the future.
Well, that was time with Bobby Brown, and I will tell you, I had some preconceived notions of who Bobby Brown was before he came into the interview. I'm glad I didn't really harp on those because I thought he was a robotic academy kid who had everything handed to him, and that is not the case. He had to work harder than a lot of people as he started skiing so much later than most people. And in order to get to the levels that he's achieved so far in life, the amount of time he's spent on snow and not learning in foam pits, learning these tricks on snow, taking the pain and learning from that has really catapulted him into another spectrum of skier. And hopefully he will make the Olympic team and we'll see him walk away with some Olympic hardware and he can close the chapter on competition skiing and work his way into the backcountry where so many skiers end up going after their competition days are over. So that was Bobby Brown. Next week on the program, we have Bobby's agent. We have Jameson Keegan. He was a longtime Red Bull employee, and Red Bull employees aren't allowed to talk about work on the record. So it's great that Jameson's not there anymore. We talk about Red Bull. We talk about his company, Superheroes Management, and walk through what an agent does in the ski, skate, snowboard, surf space. So that's next Monday on the podcast. As always, I want to thank you for listening. I also want to thank my sponsors. They are evo.com, diecutstickers.com, Sierra at Tahoe Resort, Rescue Water, and Unofficial Networks. Please support them as they support me. And enjoy the snow. It's been flying out there, and have a great week, everyone.